Welcome, everybody, to With Thunderous Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future, and also just things that piss us off and things that make us happy. This is Shooting the Poodoo, episode number, I think, a couple dozen.
24? Yeah, I think we're at 24.
Perfect. So 2 dozen. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Ahsoka trailer and another little news item about Wookiee Jedi for the upcoming Acolyte show, which I'm stoked for, as you know if you've watched our other Star Wars episodes.
Oh, yeah.
We're also going to talk about speeding cameras, because I came across an article that I thought was interesting and related to my life experience, and I thought it would be interesting to discuss in the context of, like, there seems to be some pushback against the surveillance state.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when it comes to cameras that are ubiquitous and track our every movement, which is what a speeding camera does, we'll talk about it in a bit.
Right. It's what the camera that, takes your license plate for toll roads is.
100%. They are all linked together, and with supercomputing and shit, we'll discuss, but definitely fits within the context of the surveillance state, but I think is often going unmissed. And so we can discuss that at length in a bit. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I made a sourdough pizza crust, and we had pizza yesterday. It was pretty awesome.
Oh, pardon me. That's great.
Yeah. I've been trying out different recipes and was having a lot of trouble with it tearing, and I read that sourdough makes it a bit tougher.
Yeah, it's a little less elastic, right?
Yeah. Or more
that's
elastic.
Why most pizza doughs. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a variety. Some are yeasty. That's what makes the difference between a fluffy crust.
This one is
crust.
Both. Yeah. This one was like, you have a sourdough start and you mix it in with the other stuff. You add yeast in addition to that. And then they both do their thing. But yeah, like it makes it much, much less likely to rip. So I guess, yes, that's less elastic. It makes it more to where you stretch it and it stays. Because that was a big problem I was having.
Cool. What, my hiccup?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Well, because I'm trying to fucking drink beer, and like, I am not doing nearly as well as you, but excuse me, I don't want to admit, maybe I should. I'm getting the hiccups now because I'm not fucking smoking.
You're getting the hiccups.
I never get the hiccups from beer. Almost never.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I quit smoking.
All right.
Think I cut from a pretty heavy habit.
Oh, yes, you did.
To maybe 8 or 10 a day. What?
You're down to 8 or 10 a day?
No. I down to 8 or 10 a day for several days over the last week, and then yesterday I just had one around 2:30, and I haven't had one at all today. So I was weaning myself.
Nice.
And so now I'm right in the transition where I go from having some to having none.
Yeah. And hope that you stop thinking about it.
Fucking miserable. No.
Stop wanting to roll things.
No, I still smoke weed. I ain't quitting smoking weed, man.
Crazy.
My mama didn't raise no quitter. I mean, I probably should find some like lower tar way to consume my cannabis for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't you like just vape oil? I could also like hit a bong or something that filters some of the tar.
Yeah, vape oil
and then bong hits. It seemed more like a college bro thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It seemed like it used up a whole lot of it for no good reason. No, we mostly do edibles with a little bit of the oil to
maintain the high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you got it.
Cool. Yeah, you keep your baseline. So your edibles are like your nuclear power load. That's your baseline. And then when you want to peak, that's your renewables.
Hey, there you go.
Oh, fuck, man.
Oh, man.
I was just reading they found a bunch of money to keep Diablo Canyon open.
Mm.
And they pushed through like pretty quickly a bunch of regulatory extensions. So it was already overdue, and they had extended it twice, I think we discovered when we were researching it.
Yes.
And they just extended it again through 2035.
Whoa.
Yeah, without making any of the required changes that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission determined was necessary after seeing how Fukushima happened. Remember, they said that there were certain things they had to do, or maybe it was like warm water, environmental impacts or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's some money they needed to put into the plant before they would extend them again. And they're like, just kidding. I think they might be making some reforms because the state of California put up half the money and the federal government put up the other half as part of like Biden's infrastructure bill, which of course, like most of that bill, we should have done a deep dive on that. It's a little old now, but we can maybe still look at it. A lot of people don't realize all the components in it. But at any rate, there's like $1.2 billion in there for just Diablo Canyon, plus billions and billions for other plants.
Yeah.
But it's your base load, it's your edible, it's your weed brownie. It's the weed brownie of the electric grid.
Oh man. Now I want a weed brownie. Delicious.
Oh man. What I could really use to help with this fucking kicking this smoking habit, some fucking psychedelics, man.
Not as easy to find as it used to be.
No, it's because we don't go to the places where you get them.
Yeah.
When was the last time I went to a hippie music festival, or like saw there was going to be some reggae festival at some random ass tiny town in the middle of the mountains, and I was like, I'm going there.
Yeah, I need weed. I'm gonna go there.
I need fucking mushrooms or mescaline or fucking acid or whatever. At any rate, you want to talk Ahsoka first or Speedlight Cameras?
Let's do Ahsoka first, because we were going to cover it last in the last episode. We did not.
We
have failed.
It's better for a shooting. Let's not say anything.
Okay.
One must destroy in order to create. We are no Jedi.
I started hearing whispers of Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire.
What happens when we find Thrawn?
Power, such as you've never dreamed.
I've spent most of my life fighting a war. That's why I'm trying to convince you to help me prevent another one. You and I both know who could help you with this.
She's still just as stubborn as ever.
I bet your master found you difficult at times.
Anakin never got to finish my training. I walked away from him, just like I walked away from Sabine.
You never made things easy for me, Master.
As a Jedi, sometimes you have to make the decision no one else can. But I'm counting on you to see this through.
Nice haircut. Sometimes we have to do what's right, regardless of our personal feelings.
Buckle up.
If we don't stop Thrawn, everything will be in vain. You have no power.
Anakin spoke highly of you.
I'm not here to discuss my past.
We have a lot of work to do.
Once a rebel, always a rebel.
So it's got the same people as the Acolyte? Is that right? No? Okay.
No, the ongoing joke, and I think Dave Filoni had confirmed that it is kind of like Rebels Season 5. So it's a continuation of the animated show.
Yeah.
But also The mural, yeah, which I
Yeah.
thought was really cool that they actually took the art style from the animated show and translated some of it over, at least for the visual art depicted in a live action show.
Right.
I thought that was really cool in terms of continuity. That's a trailer, so who the fuck knows like how accurate that is to the plot of the story. We already know from interviews and leaks, things that they allowed to be known is that the Dark Jedi male character, Ray Stevenson, his character is supposed to be an Order 66 survivor. And so that would make sense for him to be like, oh, your master spoke highly of you. Like they had met or went on a mission or something.
Right.
So I think that's kind of throwing like crumbs for a fan service to folks to get them hyped.
Woo.
Oh, is it just going to be a passing reference? Or better yet, there would actually be some dialogue. But this is Dave Filoni, and he is not Tony Gilroy. And I suspect this to be adventure serial stuff. I don't know, what's your vibe on this trailer? It definitely felt like the show is going to have more episode to episode importance and continuity than The Mandalorian has. Like this definitely feels like there's a beginning and an end and a bunch of shit that happens to move that through.
Yeah.
Versus The Mandalorian, which is just like, we're going on an adventure today.
And now it's time for
and we're not
quests.
sure where we're going with the story.
Yeah. Still aren't sure, but they're going to make another one. You can guarantee it.
I think
I don't know,
season 4 is going to be the last.
I mean, it definitely looks like they have a plan on this one, like there is some sort of story going on already.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to just like, Papa Pascal has, baby Grogu.
Yeah.
Hijinks
What is your take on this Ahsoka show and this MCU like type culminating event that they've talked about, that a lot of this like post Return of the Jedi, early New Republic stuff is going to have like a movie that ties together a bunch of different moving parts.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on some folks have speculated they're taking the Thrawn trilogy, which fans Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy. And I think I might have mentioned this before. The speculation is that they're that's what all the fans wanted for sequels. And then Disney made the sequels they wanted and everybody was fucking pissed.
Yeah.
And all they wanted was this story, which was a phenomenal story, to be adapted or brought, fairly accurately to the big screen. Right. And so some people are like, all of these little things that are tying together, including this show, are going to have elements, because that's the ultimate goal, is to kind of retell it in their own way, the Thrawn trilogy.
Retell it in their own way, make a whole bunch of money off plushies. I don't know. It looks as though if you look at, I think it's phase 5 of the MCU that's going on right now, you can almost just see the fans getting tired of it. Like,
yeah,
having massive crossovers where like, there's 10 different shows that you got to watch and, 5 different movies and like little tiny movies. And then finally you get a big one, it's like, that was cool for a little while, but just like comic books, I don't want to have to watch everything that comes out in order to understand it fully. Like I don't have the patience for all of it. And so like, I like if they come out with another cartoon that's like aimed at kids and it has a bunch of deep lore, I'm going to be pissed.
Well, I'm not sure how kiddie they'll make the show. I mean, I guess The Young Jedi has been pretty popular on Disney Junior. Yeah, I know adults that have watched it and they said it's a fun show. But then they did that Star Wars Resistance, which was supposed to tell a story just prior to the Disney sequels.
Yeah.
And nobody fucking watched it.
It's terrible.
You did?
Watched it. It's terrible.
The whole thing?
I don't know if I finished. I seem to remember getting kind of tired of it, but I watched at least.
How many seasons? There were 2 seasons?
10 episodes or so. I don't know. Let me check.
I don't remember. I watched like the first 2 or 3 and was like, they all took place on the same location, and they implied that this guy was going to be embedded there on behalf of the resistance for some reason. And so like all the stories were going to take place in the same fucking in the same location with the same type of recurring character, because it's a spaceport, and it was just going to be a bunch of adventures dealing with people at the spaceport. And I was like, this is fucking dumb.
I think I saw around 20 episodes at least from the looks of it. But yeah, there's 40 of them.
So 2 20-episode seasons.
Yeah. It wasn't great. I mean, it was filler. It was just something to keep people entertained.
Yeah, I thought for me too, like a lot of it was the animation style. Like I don't know what it was about it. I think because it was a lot of like what would you say, like hard lines, like, and a lot of really, the characters were kind of like muted colors, and the background, at least in the few episodes I saw, was very bright and white, and it was just fucking hard to watch. And there wasn't a lot going around in the background.
Yeah, which was really weird. Like it took place on a planet, not in space. You should have all the normal stuff that a planet has, and they didn't really focus on it too much. There were like this. They're like a water-based town, and they have like some encounters with some water-based, monsters and shit like that. But like overall, not very good. Not very, entertaining. Just kind of filler.
Did you ever watch any of those Lego Star Wars movies?
No. I think the only
they're
Lego
all on Disney Plus.
I'm sure they are. Yeah, I think the only Lego movies I've seen are the Batman, and then the two main ones.
Again, it seems like they've trotted it out and done it so much that it's like I don't even know what they've done with Lego.
Yeah.
But I thought, like, I watched a Star Wars Christmas special Lego, and I mean, they were kind of funny. Like, there's some pretty well-written humor in them.
Yeah. I mean, I played the video games. Those were good.
Oh, yeah. I heard the Lego Star Wars games were really great. Did they ever finish the most recent iteration? I heard there were production problems.
I don't know about that. I played, like, the prequels.
Yeah, I think they did a whole saga, which would include the sequels and like elements of like the shows and everything up to current. And then there's no shows going on, so I'm not like going to Star Wars channels. So like get opinions, watch reviews, do all that, and interact with people in the chat, right? Like, which is what I do, or the live chat or the static chat. So I haven't kept up with the news, but Star Wars Meg would regularly cover video games and other Star Wars stuff. And she would talk about Lego. And the last I heard, which was months ago, that they were facing further production delays. So I don't know. Anyway, moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about this article on Screen Rant. I didn't think they'd let me do it. Star Wars showrunner on the joy of breaking George Lucas's strangest rules. So that headline alone, I want to draw attention to.
Yeah.
Fans, as I've said a few times now, have already made up their mind that show sucks, and that Disney only wants to break George Lucas's legacy and trash it. Right.
Okay.
And so that headline is like, oh, the joy of breaking George Lucas's rule. Right. So it's more of this kind of progressing this narrative that like no one can honor Star Wars. But when we did did we do a half an episode or a whole episode on Leslie Headland? And
we did a whole episode.
And a whole episode on the Acolyte and Leslie Headland, the showrunner for that show.
Yeah.
Which we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think we demonstrated, based on the sources we put together, that she does actually love fucking Star Wars.
Right.
So that headline is meant to make all the fucking fanboys angry, in my opinion. I don't know. Am I just kind of overthinking it or what?
No, it sounds like it. I mean, it may be, it's certainly, like you could look at it, like I would look at it and just be like, oh, like nobody else would let him, he wouldn't let anyone else do this I got him to let me do it, or something along.
Or
those
I
lines.
just don't care what he wants.
Right. I like Star
I
Wars.
am woman, hear me roar. Right?
Well,
Yeah.
Well, and more along the lines of like during the episode that we had there, she had said like, I want to do Star Wars the way I want to do Star Wars. Like, I'm a fan of it. I think I can handle this. I got it. and I mean, from the sound of what she has planned, where it's I think it's Wushai films, that sounds good to me. Like, I want to see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Jedi. That sounds great.
That sounds fucking rad. It sounds like the what was the Cartoon Network Clone Wars? Who was the one that did that? It was a famous
Gennady
Tartakovsky, and he's a famous animator.
He is now. I don't know that he was at the time, but he is now.
Tartakovsky, that sounds like Russian or fucking Romanian or something.
Yeah, some sort of Eastern.
Or I thought he was
European.
Japanese.
I don't think he is. Let me look.
Maybe he was a Russian working in Japan as an animator. Who knows?
I mean, there's a lot of blending over too with Eastern Europe, or sorry, Western Europe and Eastern Europe and Western Asia. There's a lot of crossover there. He is a Russian American animator.
Oh, he's Russian American. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that original Clone Wars was cool, and what I was thinking of when
amazing.
you said Weishu.
Yeah, I think it's Wushai. I believe.
Wushai. Remember one of the episodes with Mace Windu, where Mace Windu almost single-handedly like decimates a droid army, and he's doing this like pop,
yeah,
just like fisticuffs type shit, but he's like punching the air, and bolts are like flying out of these fucking droids, and he's like boom, puts his hand up, and the droid just like into all of its component parts and falls down.
Yeah.
Where the Force was like really fantastical and not like something that assisted you, but was really like a magical power where you could just literally put your hand up and something would break into all of its components instantaneously.
And I mean,
so that's kind of what I'm thinking with
why
this
not?
high-end martial arts, using a lot of Force powers when fighting and all this stuff.
For me, that was the real downer of the prequels, and then definitely the sequel. What the hell do you call 7, 8, and 9? The new ones. The new ones.
They're sequels.
Is they had the opportunity to make more use of the Force, and they didn't. Instead, like, no one used it very seamlessly with their fighting style. It was always like, lightsaber, stop, push. Lightsaber, stop. And it was like, I want to see more of the smoothness. And I think you see that in the Ahsoka trailer. The Ray Stevenson character, he's more stiff, and but then it looks like his apprentice is a bit more smooth, where she's like da.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And they've made kind of two brand new characters that seem really intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Because like here's this apprentice. They hired a Eastern European actress, I believe, to play, and then Ray Stevenson is a British actor, I want to say, who's been in the game for a long while, or was in the game for a long while. He died, but I always like to say never mind. I'm not going to say it. We're not going to talk about. I'm not going to say it. Nope. Anyway, I think that they've done a very good job making them clearly distinct characters, even though they're working together and clearly there's a hierarchy. I think it's interesting that they've, like, just like you were saying with the fighting style, like his is old ways, maybe a bit more rigid, and he clearly comes from the Jedi Order, or so it appears, right? So we understand he's a Order 66 survivor. She might have come into the Force. He realized her Force sensitive, and because he teeters between light and dark, he might still have a better connection and grasp of the light than she does as a young person, not having the wisdom and guidance of an institution like the Jedi Order. And so she might be, and that might be reflected in her fighting style. And I think that's really just kind of an interesting creative decision, and that tells me that I'm gonna enjoy the show either way. But I admit, like, a lot of people hated on Mandalorian season 3, and I was like, I don't know, we already discussed it, but just to reiterate, like, you spent 2 seasons complaining that it's fucking doesn't go anywhere, and then they just tried to make it go somewhere really quick and almost kind of random.
Yeah.
And only loosely tied in the elements that they had been exploring piecemeal in the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And didn't really expand on them further. They just threw more shit related to those 2 in there without really bringing it all together, and to close out the storyline of Gideon without really further developing that or making it such a cartoon villainous, like, I'm going to clone myself and give myself force power. like who are you, a fucking Jesus Christ? Yeah, cartoon villain, really.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But I thought the season overall was pretty good. I thought the action, the set sequences, there were a couple kind of like filler episodes, but I felt like even in the filler episode, they were building and resolving tension between characters. So they were actually like writing a fucking show, whereas like every other thing is Mandalorian versus, nameless villain, right? Like,
yeah.
Even in the credits, it's like Thug Alien number 3.
Well, and then it gives us something to look forward to. We're gonna have, Grogu, holding up a lightsaber, wearing, Mandalorian chainmail, riding on a mythosaur one day.
Yeah, and it's gonna be great. I would be happy if the last episode of the entire series, which is the last episode of season 4, I think, if that's all it was. It was literally just like a post credit with just Grogu riding a mythosaur, and then it cuts scenes to resolving, doing the third act of someone's storyline, then cuts back to Grogu just riding the mythosaur.
The whole season is just him getting to some fight. You don't know what it is.
Exactly. I think they're going to show up in the Filoni stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a brief cameo with in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's necessary, but I wouldn't be mad if it fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's a piece of information, or if they're passing through and want to talk to Grief Karga to get information, or they're doing like an investigative thing, trying to figure out the Shadow Council and Thrawn's role in it. And they go and they're like, okay, they just defeated Gideon and blew up his base. We're sending an investigative team to like figure out what exactly happened. I'd be cool with any of that. But I think they've already got enough going for themselves to tell the story they want without having to tie anything else in.
And hopefully they
Dark
avoid
Jedi. It looks like they have to. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I really hope they avoid all the tie-ins. Like, let some of the shows just be themselves. Don't make them be part of the bigger universe. I mean, like, there should be like people that are allowed to do stuff that only affects their local region.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of dealing with, like, in The Mandalorian, they were dealing with a member of the Shadow Council, which is kind of a galactic scale kind of thing. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I think that's the beauty of Andor. I think some people had a problem with it at first. I loved it from the very beginning. I loved it before it was a thing, when they first announced the concept. Yeah, but the universe was small and well detailed.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Acolyte is, she's not as, I mean, her writing's okay. I watched at least the first season of Russian Doll.
Mm-hmm.
It's not terrible.
Okay, high praise.
Yeah, I mean, Russian Doll was an interesting concept. I think they handled it well. I think the things they tied in were well. It's not what's going to happen in this show, where she's like, I want to do martial arts. I'm going to have Dark Jedi and this and the other thing. I do think, though, that, like you said, it's going to have zero tie-ins. The closest tie-ins are going to be elements of the High Republic, which was novels and
comic
I
books.
think the Young Jedi on Disney Junior or whatever, that's set in the High Republic era, I want to say.
I believe you are correct,
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I heard that it wasn't fucking complete shit, which is interesting for a show that's literally like for 5 and 6 year olds. Which, and then I've heard like some of the High Republic novels are hit and miss, and the comic books, and there's just too much, like you said, to consume. So it's not somewhere I'm going.
Yeah.
I did consider maybe trying to pick up when they finish comic series and getting them as complete graphic novels for my daughter.
Yeah. Well, that's a good call.
Yeah, because she's about the age where she'd appreciate something like that. And then maybe she can summarize the stories, or I'll buy them for her. And if she finishes them and I have the inclination, I'll read them later. But let's read this article real quick so we can move on.
Man. Yeah, man. So Leslie Headland was talking to the Dagobah Dispatch about the Wookiee Jedi Master Kelnaka. Kelnaka. And the inclusion of him breaks one of Lucas's strangest rules, the source of which I could not find because it is referenced in 2 different regions. And the first was for Knights of the Old Republic 2, the video game. They wanted to have, like, all the people that could follow you could become Jedi, with the exception of, like, the droid, one other person who was, like, just clearly dumb, and then the Wookiee. Everybody was like, why not the Wookiee? You know, he, like, everybody else gets it, why not him? And apparently, you know, George Lucas was just like, nah, no Wookiee Jedi. And then
okay. So that was during the Knights of the Old Republic 2?
Yeah, the making of that video.
90s, early 20-aughts?
I think it's early 20-aughts. And then there was another reference to Star Wars Insider number 79, and it was in 2005. And it wasn't even inside the magazine itself. So getting a hold of the magazine wouldn't fix anything. It was an online addendum. And basically, it was repeated. No. Both of those sources are, like, impossible to find now, though, because it's so fucking old. And one was on StarWars.com, and, like, that page doesn't exist anymore. So it's impossible to prove, but, like, everyone remembers it. So unless it's, you know, some, like, weird Mandela effect thing, you know, at some point, at one point, possibly 2, George Lucas said, no Wookiee Jedis.
Yeah, and that sounds like a fact that when Leslie was talking to Dave Filoni, that would have come up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she's like, oh, yeah, and I want to have a Wookiee Jedi. And he might have been like, well, there was a couple times George said you never wanted a Wookiee Jedi.
But George isn't here anymore.
As you can see in this article, or in this quote from Headland, she loved Solo. She loved Junus's performance, who's the guy who replaced Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca for the sequels and in the Solo movie. She wanted to do some action work, some fighting, and not just have him be a sidekick, which I think is really fucking rad, to be like, you know what? Fuck that. Wookiees are rad. Why are Wookiees the sidekick?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, we're going to have a fucking Wookiee that's bad fucking ass, right?
Yeah.
And so she's like, I especially love the idea of having a Wookiee with the side of his head shaved, which is that fits with what I understand of Headland from Russian Doll, is it was all this, like, super high end, like, New York City, all of these kind of hipster like people who are at the cutting edge of everything fashion cool and all this. So that wanting to have a Wookiee with half a head shaved, just like, that sounds like Leslie Headland. I think she's shaved half of her head too. I want to say there's photos of her with, like, half her head shaved and the other half is pink or something. It's kind of weird like that. Can you scroll down a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Said a lot of times these characters come up, even Amandla and Lee Jung Jae's characters, who are the 2 main characters. Lee Jung Jae is the main character in Squid Game. And he's I'll tell you about it in a second. They come up almost from character design first. I can see the way that they look and the costumes they wear. I'm a very visual person in that sense. So that's how Kelnaka came to be. I just couldn't resist being on set with a Wookiee. It was very selfish of me. Which, again, to me, tells me that she loves Star Wars, because she's like, honestly, I needed a character. I always thought it'd be cool to have a Wookiee that looked like this. And I really wanted to make a show with a Wookiee. So, like, we got a Wookiee. And then it tells you a little bit. It's not the first Wookiee Jedi to be in Star Wars canon, the first, but the first in live action.
Yeah. I mean, there was, like, Lobaka and, like, 1 or 2 other ones. I had a list, but I misplaced it.
So, despite Lucas's rule, he ultimately relented as the fan favorite Wookiee Jedi youngling Gungi was created for the Clone Wars in the arc where they learn how to build their lightsabers. and then he also came back in season 3 of the Bad Batch, or season 2 of the Bad Batch. I'm sorry. Yeah, they haven't released 3 yet. So at any rate, and apparently there's one in the phase 1 and phase 2 of the High Republic.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and in this last paragraph, Wookiees are compelling Jedi because their cultural beliefs and personality traits. They have a strong connection to nature as they strive for harmony with their home planet and cherish worship trees there, which make them more closely connected to the Force. And in the Bad Batch, you see that is that the elders, the village elders, take Gungi to pray at a fucking tree. And like, what is the Force if not like an extension of nature worship, right?
Big
Like,
ass trees. Yeah. They are the pagans.
Trees.
Yeah. It's the pagans of the Star Wars universe.
They are, yeah. And there are trees, sacred trees in Star Wars canon, in the Clone Wars. And I think actually in Tales of the Jedi, there's a scene where Dooku's at the tree, but there's a sacred tree in the courtyard at the Jedi Temple. And then there's the sacred tree that Luke's in the sequel trilogy. And how that tree actually was kind of like the Force symbol that we always assumed was like a lightsaber hilt is actually like it's a tree. It's a tree of life or whatever. Yeah.
Fun stuff.
So anyway, that's it. Leslie Headland's rad, and there's going to be a fucking Jedi Wookiee because according to her, she's selfish and she wanted to make a show with a Wookiee.
She did it all for the Wookiee.
She did it all for the Wookiee, man. That would have been the best headline of this episode. She did it all for the Wookiee. It's not too late to change it.
It's not
change it before you upload it to like Spotify and shit.
There you go.
Making yourself a note. All right, let's talk about traffic cans. I admittedly get my news from a very limited feed since I'm no longer on social media. That feed is usually when I open Chrome.
Yeah,
there's a whole bunch of stories and I just scroll them and read a few. It's actually pretty cool because I get a lot of smattering of a lot of stuff. Like the algorithm does provide a variety of things. So like I see things, news stories on archaeological research. I see stuff on supercomputing, things I should have passed to you about like new developments in steady state batteries and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, so I'm just kind of like getting a sampling of everything. But this is one of the ones that came up in my news feed. And I was like, oh shit. Because it's a pilot program that's eventually their plan is to make it statewide.
And I mean, I think we all saw it coming, just because of the fact that we're already getting bills based on our license plate. That means they're tracking us. They got cameras. They know what the frame rate of the camera is. They can count how many frames it takes for you to get from one place to another and then ticket you. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yeah. They're taking pictures of you as like all those red light cameras. They're always talking about adding more red light cameras. And I guess in some ways they've cut people blowing red lights. I don't know. I think the data is fairly clear on red light cameras and on speeding cameras, unfortunately. And we'll go into a little bit of that data. Drivers may, and this is from what, NBC Bay Area?
This is from San Francisco Gate.
Oh, SF Gate. Okay, cool. Which is like I think it's the online portion of the Chronicle. It started as like a blog, I think. It might be an independent one. Don't quote me. It could be completely independent. But they publish a lot of horticultural stuff, actually. SF Gate's got a whole bunch of stuff on house plants and growing plants, and especially the Bay Area.
Just says it's owned by Hearst Newspapers.
Yeah, I think Hearst owns a Chronicle too. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Hearst and McClatchy are like the two companies that own most fucking newspapers.
They own everything.
They do. Oh, they're fucking huge.
San Francisco Chronicle, Houston Chronicle, Cosmopolitan, Esquire, 50% of the A&E networks. Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it's corporate consolidation, right?
Yeah.
There's two companies that own like every small news station in America, 2 or 3 companies. And then there's 2 or 3 companies that own all of the fucking newspapers.
Yeah.
2 or 3 companies dominate telecoms, dominate health care provision, dominate, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's just corporate
I
consolidation.
believe it's duopoly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drivers may soon be getting speeding tickets without ever talking to an officer if a bill gets approved authorizing speed limit cameras. The program would give speeding drivers a ticket using speed cameras and an automatic billing system, according to the Assembly bill. The speed safety system shall capture images of rear license plate of vehicles that are traveling 11 miles per hour or more over the posted speed limit, and notices of violation shall only be issued to vehicles based on that evidence, the bill states. Fines would start at 50 for going 11 over the posted speed and increase from there. At least that fine is not so bad. Because I think as of right now, when an officer pulls you over, like, it doesn't matter if you're 10 over or 20 over. Like,
it's like 180
depending on
bucks.
the officer's mood, 20 over or 30 over, you're probably going to go to jail. But generally speaking, I don't get speeding tickets very often, but I remember the last one I paid was like $100.
I got one back in probably like 2006 or 7 for $180 for going like 10 or 15 over the speed limit. I think it was 10. Yeah. So
in Butte County?
No, north of Butte County. I was heading up to Eureka.
Was it on the interstate?
No, it was actually on a very small, very small road through the mountains. It was on my way back, and it's downhill, and I was just, breaking into it.
Highway 299 or 36?
I think it is, yeah, because I was basically like, brake going into the turn, speed up going out of it, and, just repeat, and then it drops you off in a small town, and I was just going so fast.
Oh, into a town, 25 mile an hour? Was it a county police officer or like a local? I don't remember. I was going to say some of those counties that are remote up there, like they'll charge way higher fees because they're pass-through towns, and so and their budgets are strained because they don't have like.
And the shitty part was it was dark, so I couldn't see, and I'd already like slowed down. So he must have like clocked me going pretty fast, coming like out of the mountains into the town. And I slowed down, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm in town." Slow down, and then somebody got behind me. I didn't know who, because it was dark and I couldn't see, and just kept right on my ass. And so I sped up a little bit, right on my ass. Sped up a little bit, right on my ass, and then whoop whoop. I was like, "You fucker!"
You're like, I wasn't going fast until you started riding my ass, and I was trying to build up some space because I can't see, and if I come up on a stoplight, I don't want you to rear end me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Asshole. So anyway, there's a pilot program being placed for 5 years and being reassessed to go statewide, because right now it's only in, what does it say, several major cities, including San Jose, Oakland, Glendale, LA, Long Beach, the city of San Francisco. So at any rate, it's just going to be a pilot program, but based on their success or not. Apparently, they do track good data, so they know which stretches of road have the most fucking fatalities related to speeding.
Yeah.
And all these other things. And so for the first 60 days, they're going to send warnings instead of tickets.
That's
which
actually
is nice.
A really nice idea. Yeah. And, I'm of two minds about this. And the one is like, no, man, like, make a person do it. If you really want to, take my money, make a person do it. And then the other one is like, all the time when I see someone who's just speeding like crazy in and out of traffic, and I'm like, man, cops never around when someone who really deserves it is driving crazy. It's like, well, now there will be, I guess.
So I kind of have conflicting opinions about this.
Yeah.
First of all, my experience in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, is like, damn, that's like, this place is crazy. Like, the highways are bananas, and there's speeding cameras all over the place. And I was talking to my friend who was an American currently living outside of Dubai, but he was flying for Emirates Airways. So he knows the city really well. He'd been living in the UAE for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Anyway, when I was in there, I met up with him for dinner and drinks or whatever. And we drove around for a bit in the afternoon and went out to the little fake islands and all that other stuff, just to kind of show me some stuff that I couldn't see when I'm basically limited to where the public transit goes. Because I went from the airport to the place in the city I stayed via public transit and back. So he drove me places where public transit doesn't go.
Mhm.
And at any rate, I mentioned the speeding cameras, and his response to me was, you know, it doesn't mean, because I was like, people seem to be driving fucking crazy, even though there seems to be like monitoring and enforcement. And he's like, dude, people who are rich don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Because it literally like comes to them, and then their person in charge of like managing their affair sends a fucking payment off, and they don't ever realize, you know, they're not even aware of it, or they might be aware that they got a ticket, but they don't give a shit because they have enough money to pay it. And he's like, ultimately what that winds up doing is putting the most of the revenue generation from it on the backs of all the fucking immigrants that live there. Because almost like, I don't know, it's something like 2/3 of the UAE population is fucking just on visas. They're not citizens. And they have a crazy amount of migrant labor there. In fact, John Oliver did a really great piece on it when he was talking about the Summer Olympics. No, it was FIFA. It was the World Cup. I'm sorry. I think it was a World Cup in Dubai, right?
Yes, most recently.
Yeah, I think John Oliver did a piece on the World Cup in Dubai and was talking about all the, like, basically practically slave labor that they used to build stuff. And that was true when I was there. I mean, that city, at the hotel I was in, which is near they call the Clock Tower District, it was a newer development. I love that. The penalty for a crime is a fine. The law only exists for the lower class. I love it. Is that
Final
from
Fantasy Tactics, like 1998 or 1999?
Is that a direct quote, or did someone just copy it?
No, that's a direct quote from the game.
I love that.
That game is awesome.
That's fucking woke as shit.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyway, that's the point I was making, is in Dubai, the burden of the ticketing falls on all of the immigrants. Because the people, the Emiratis, have oil money, and they don't give a fuck how much you fine them, because they have money.
Yeah.
Like, at any rate,
that's like riding the bus for me.
Right? Exactly.
Bus fare.
At any rate, so like I had that concern, but then at the same time, in that first paragraph of this article, I'm like, maybe this will reduce, like, because all they're doing is looking up, okay, boom, take a picture, computer, AI, whatever, searches it, finds it, cross references with the DMV, boom, 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 boom. Now you've avoided a cop interacting with a black person. No, I mean, every interaction between black people and cops, or minorities and cops, reduces the chance that a cop is going to murder someone. Do I think a massive, energy intensive, no doubt, plus
surveillance state,
expensive, because it's expensive to maintain and train people to maintain it. It's expensive to maintain the computers and have the humans that have to.
Oh, and people are going to deface it. People are going to steal it. People are going to, break it. Yeah.
I hope so, right? And they resist that. I hope they knock over those police droids that are handing out like leashless dog tickets and shit on the beaches in Southern California. Like, what? You haven't seen that shit?
No.
They have like fucking robo police, or at least they've been experimenting with them. I remember seeing some videos. Maybe they were staged or whatever. I thought they had fucking police droids. We're gonna look it up and talk about it in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
RoboCop.
Yeah.
You saw something?
No, not right off the bat.
Okay. At any rate, I thought I recall seeing something about little fucking dome-like droids rolling around, being police droids looking for shit, alerting real police when they saw things. But they're basically more like surveillance, is what they are, mobile surveillance. They just cruise around looking for violations, and then they alert the police when there's a violation.
Yeah.
Open container, dog off a leash, someone that's skateboarding in an area where it says don't skateboard, that kind of shit.
Real Orwellian shit.
Petty, Orwellian shit, right?
Yeah.
Social control shit.
Yeah.
At any rate, so like there's that kind of flip side where I'm like, well, maybe it'll reduce police encounters, but like, why should we need to have a fucking energy intensive and expensive and intrusive surveillance apparatus to keep cops from killing fucking black and brown people. Seems like maybe we should just try and keep cops from killing black and brown people first and then concern ourselves. But if you want to bring up, I don't think this article has the data, does it?
No. You're talking about this article?
Yeah, this article doesn't get into data, right?
No, but I believe this one does.
Yes. Scroll in so I can read.
Enhance.
Thank you. Enhance. All right. Every year, 30 people are killed, 200 more seriously injured while traveling on San Francisco streets. This is just San Francisco.
Yeah. One town.
Scroll down. They're saying it's preventable, and so reducing speeds is part of their like objective of transforming the city.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of go over some common sense stuff, like unsafe speed is the most common collision factor in crashes that result in injuries. It's dangerous for because the field of vision is narrowed. It reduces the likelihood potential hazards can be seen and avoided. Drivers have less time to react and maneuver. And safely negotiating curves is also compromised when you're going fast.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a vehicle longer to stop when it sees a hazard when it's traveling faster. In the event of a collision, and this is kind of a big one because they have a nice little graph here below. In the event of a collision, the vehicle speed largely determines how much trauma is dealt, which is just common sense. Well, it's just more force, right?
Yeah. It's FMA. Force equals mass times acceleration.
Right. And so when you're
faster, you do more damage.
And you have a lot of mass.
Yeah.
So you have to address one of those. You can't really change them. So maybe we can have you can drive faster if you're in one of them little plastic golf carts.
Hell yeah.
Because really that's what we should be doing. I mean, I think addressing the A part of that equation.
I mean, that one guy definitely survived that golf cart encounter.
We watched that fucking clip. This bastards. Anyway, a person hit by a car traveling at 20 miles an hour has a 9 in 10 chance of surviving, while a person hit one just going twice as fast at 40, which is 40 miles an hour, still not that fast.
No.
Has only a 1 in 10 chance of surviving.
Yep.
And so here's a cool little chart that just shows that as you increase, it's essentially a linear relationship. And probably at 60 miles an hour, it like approaches 0.
Yeah, I think that like 55 was set for a long time because it gave you like a chance. And then like
I don't think that's why 55 was set. Finish
not for the human, but for the car. And then as car safety mechanisms got better and better, they're like, and road construction got better. They're like, okay, let's raise it.
That was actually not the. I mean, that might have been an extra argument for it, but my understanding is that they put the speed limit at 55 during the oil embargo in the 70s. And then it just took them a long time to revise it and have them go back up. And that was because they determined that like if you just controlled and had everybody drive about that speed, it was the ideal efficiency speed.
Right.
Versus
and that's the thing, is like
drive really fast or drive really slow.
Yeah, well, every mile per hour that you increase takes more energy than the mile per hour before it. But you get more wind resistance and stuff like that. And so like you can only really go so fast before it starts to be really, really inefficient.
Right, exactly. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But I'm sure that the crashes probably had something to do with it as well. So here's the thing that I really wanted to get to. Because I said, as much as I fucking have an issue with like the surveillance state stuff, right? We talk a lot about CIA, FBI, spying on Americans, the kind of the way that the tech companies have colluded with members of government and various government agencies to dish out information on us, how like most everything we do where we can't have a conversation with our partner without our phone hearing it and then advertising to us, those kinds of intrusions. Pardon me. Those intrusions on our privacy. I'm checking time. We're going to run over just a bit. These intrusions to our privacy. And then at the same time, despite that, then I look at the data and I'm like, that's a tough fucking call because the data is pretty goddamn clear that it helps. But there's also this other concern. And at what point do we balance those and determine and maybe there's a way to do it to where like, It's all encrypted and controlled in blockchain in a way that's transparent, that we all know that this is also not being used. Because if they are taking a picture of your license plate to give you a speeding ticket, they are they have the computing power to scan every license plate and track it. They're like, oh, you passed this speeding camera at this time, but didn't pass this one at this time. We check your bank record. It doesn't look like you stopped and bought a Red Bull at the gas station. So where did you go? And now, oh, something happened in this area. They look at your meta profile and be like, oh, you have an issue with, such and such a government agency for some grievance. And there was this thing that happened. You're now a suspect as a terrorist suspect.
This is already being used by banks for determining fraud cases. One of the guys who did fraud at the bank I worked at was telling me about how, like, oh yeah, some bills showed up on their account for Las Vegas and like a really fancy restaurant with like known for their really expensive steaks and stuff like that. And the family claimed like, no, that wasn't us. Somebody must have stolen our data, and gone on a shopping spree in Las Vegas. And the fraud department just looked at their social media that was open to the public and could see pictures of them like outside the restaurant, like, yeah. With the dates, with everything, with them being like, we're in Vegas doing this. And they're like, okay, we're not going to give you back your money because this was
and we're filing fraud charges.
Yeah, and we're filing fraud
because
charges,
you attempted to get us to write this off.
Yeah,
when you spent that money. Yeah, that's fraud. And that's how most of the January 6th people got caught, right?
And it already happens. Like, yeah,
anybody that's like for January 6th is like, they got roped into it and blah, blah, blah. No, these people were posting some pretty fucking fucked up shit on their social media.
Voluntarily.
And weren't just there, but we're like, we are here to take our country back. We are here to stop the counting of this election, which are clearly fucking federal crimes to disrupt congressional business, especially to attempt to like prevent the peaceful exchange of power or whatever. Yeah. And that's what they said. So they're like, oh, well, they were just going there because they want an election integrity. I was like, read what they fucking wrote. The only election integrity they wanted was that the election needed to go the way they wanted it to. Anyway, let's look at some data real quick.
Yeah.
So, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, speed safety cameras have many traffic benefits that augment traditional police enforcement, including providing consistent speed enforcement in locations with a history of speed-related injury crashes, right? Like I was saying. And I'd be okay if they target, like, dude, too many people have died here. We're going to put a camera up until we create a culture of people driving slower, right? And in conjunction, when we have funding for architectural ways of slowing traffic, which there are many, there's a lot of ways. If you narrow a road, that's why I hate this road over behind me, Manzanita, because it's super fucking wide with a bike lane and then a big wide shoulder that's almost as wide as the lane itself. And it's like 25 miles an hour. And you're like, this road is wider than many 45-mile-an-hour roads in town. Like it's kind of, I mean, I understand there's like other no stop signs and stoplights coming off of some of the feeder roads. Yeah. And so it kind of makes sense. And it's kind of curvy
like that.
So like it makes sense to drive slower, but I don't know anybody that drives fucking 25 miles an hour. We drive 35.
As long as they don't drive 36, they'll be okay, even under this new law.
Apparently, yeah.
Just got to drive 35 or under. Make sure you're very careful, though. Maybe aim for 34.
Yeah, focusing solely on monitoring speed while impartially enforcing the speed limit. Again, prevent you being like, well, that's a black guy, so I'm going to pull him over for speeding a little versus someone who's speeding much faster but was in a nicer car.
And I'm okay as long as the ticketing process is completely automated as well. Like it just feeds the data into a black box. The black box shits out a ticket. I'm okay with that.
Yep.
It's if you put a human in between there who's like, oh, let me just pull up this person's record. Black person, send that out. Let me pull this up. White person, don't send that out. Like, just keep humans out of it as much as possible.
That's an important part of the conversation that needs to happen. I think you're 100% correct. Right, operating in locations that may be otherwise dangerous for law enforcement personnel to be stationed. Is that code word for like the ghetto?
Probably.
Perhaps.
But like, if you think cameras are going to survive very long in the ghetto,
but I also think of some of the passes, if you want to call them that, like through American Canyon and like on down into San Francisco to the Bay Bridge or whatever. There's a bunch of places where the interstate is fucking tight against those mountains, and really it's not safe for a cop to pull someone over for speeding there because it's so narrow and because people are driving so fast and there's so much traffic. So in that case, like, okay, a lot of people speed through here, but like there's not really a safe place to stop within several miles. So we're going to use this traffic enforcement camera so cops don't have to pull people over through here.
Right.
And I think that's yet again, another data point. Okay, that makes sense to me. Enhancing enforcement without significant additional staff and resources.
Here's what this made me think of, though, is going back to your talking about the energy intensive mechanism, is that if you completely do away with traffic cops, I would then question if you had just saved more energy by getting rid of the traffic cops, not driving around in their big, heavy vehicles that don't get good gas mileage.
That's true.
Yeah. Are you saving more energy than you're putting into the camera and the computer system?
But I think that this is a way, honestly, if anything, this is not about energy efficiency at all.
Of course not.
This
no,
is probably
I'm trying to look on the bright side.
I know this is, but you're correct. Sure, if they hired more traffic officers, that would ultimately in the life cycle analysis of all the vehicles, vehicle maintenance, the replacement schedule of vehicles, I'm sure they're replacing cop vehicles more often than they'll have to replace the camera systems or perform maintenance on these systems because they're going to be fucking plugged into the fucking internet. And so the servers and all of that shit and all the back office billing is going to be in some suburb somewhere. Right. And realistically,
it's remote work for people.
The actual equipment they're using, probably expensive up front, but probably has a lifespan of many years. Probably much more than a police vehicle, because I think I don't think a police vehicle even gets 100,000 miles. I think at like 50,000, they fucking swap.
I think they trade them out because the maintenance cost starts to balloon from that point on. It's funny.
And they drive the shit out of them.
They absolutely do. Like I watched.
They're fucking hard on those.
I watched a cop like cut a guy off and then like speed up by at least 10 miles per hour, just to get off at the next exit or something like that. And I'm like, what was that all about? And then what's funny is this all makes me think all the cameras and everything. If you haven't played this game, play this game.
Watch
it's a good game. Yeah. It's all about. I think the city is Chicago. And it's all about how they set up cameras, supposedly to stop crime and all that stuff. And then in order to fight back, all the hackers take control of it and start doing all kinds of fun shit with it.
Okay.
Eventually they shut the system down.
That's cool. So here we go. NTSB determined, scroll a little lower. Just for some numbers here, some quick numbers because we're out of time. NTSB determined that between 2005 and 2014, 31% of all traffic fatalities cited speeding as a factor. The authors note the involvement of a speeding passenger-related vehicles in fatal crashes is underestimated, suggesting this percentage is likely even higher, meaning the total number of deaths, because they're just counting the total number of crashes that had fatalities versus how many fatalities total divided by number of whatever. Scroll a bit further. Over 150 communities across the U.S. have implemented speed safety camera enforcement, which is something I did not know. When I thought, I was like, wow, this is fucking Orwellian. They're going to roll it out and pilot it in 7 or 8 black cities in the country, or in the state rather, and then make it statewide if they like what they see. And so since there's a bunch of other communities, we have pretty solid data. So scroll and let's just highlight some of this. Washington, D.C. experienced a 73% reduction in traffic fatalities, a decrease from 71 in deaths in 2001 to 19 deaths in 2012, and 34% decrease in traffic-related injuries. Whereas 1 in 3 drivers were traveling 10 miles per hour above the speed limit, When cameras were introduced, the rate of speeders dropped to just 1 in 40.
So it sounds like it works.
Yeah, so Portland, Oregon reported a 46% reduction in traffic fatalities from an average of 56.8 before the program to an average of 30.5. So just about half. And average and 85th percentile speeds also declined at speed safety camera locations. There was an 85% decrease in the number of drivers exceeding the speed limit by 10 miles per hour or more. I just want to say it's very interesting how it shows how the different governments collect the statistics.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why are you using percents, but you're using this? Oh, because you just chose to do it that way.
Yeah, and they had 71 deaths, and they're 48.2.
Yeah. In New York City, in zones where cameras were installed, total crashes declined by 15%, total injuries by 17%, and fatalities by 55%. So consistently 50% or 50 to 75% around that in just these 3 cities in fatalities. And speeding was reduced by 70%. Daily violations declined over time as drivers started to be mindful of the cameras and drive more responsibly. Again, another point pointed out in an article we won't read, but maybe you can put in the show notes.
It's there.
I pulled someone's master's thesis, did a study of Abu Dhabi, which is also in the United Arab Emirates, and their traffic cameras. And I was looking at that document because I was like, fuck, this was what I learned in Dubai. Does he say anything about it? And he didn't. He didn't mention that rich people avoid it, although he did mention that there are several things that drivers get hip to, like drivers slow down in the areas where there are cameras.
See, what I find interesting is there are certain areas where you just can't get around. And so you can have one camera that boom clocks you. And then 5 miles later, have another camera that clocks you, and you can do the math and figure out your average speed and see if you were speeding or not. So you don't have to be just in the area where there's a ton of cameras. Just 2 cameras can get you. Because if it's you would have had to go 75 miles per hour in order to get from this camera to this camera, we know you broke the law. So we're going to give you that ticket anyway.
Fair enough. Interestingly, to finish on this, New York City Department of Transportation found that between 2014 and 2016, a very short period of time in the grand scheme of things, 81% of drivers did not receive more than 1 violation.
And that leads credence to the idea that if you do the warning period that's been talked about here,
that a lot
people
of
are going to get warnings and be like, oh, fuck. And it's very similar. I saw this effect work on an aunt of mine because I went to visit and she was like, hey, what do you know about, stealing stuff off the internet? And I was like, what do you want to know? She's like, well, I got a letter from Comcast that said that, this movie was, downloaded via our stuff. And I think it was because, my daughter's boyfriend came over and downloaded it while he was here. And I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And he didn't, do the steps necessary. To protect yourself. But it scared the shit out of her. And he was like, or she was like, he cannot have his computer, when he comes over here next time. I was like,
we'll let him use a VPN.
This was a while back. I don't know if they were as readily available.
Interestingly enough, I called Comcast and let them know a friend of mine had come over and stayed and must have downloaded stuff. Because I was like, hey, I got these letters saying I downloaded a bunch of stuff and they were all dated the same day. Yeah. A friend must have come over and done it. And they're like, oh, change all these settings on your router to prevent VPNs and all this other stuff. Of course, I didn't do any of that because the friend was very close to me. And so anyway, but I did ask them about big old wink. I did ask Comcast about it, and Comcast said it takes many successive violations in a fairly short period of time. And once you escalate to a certain point, it takes longer for you to reset. But if it's just a violation and then 3 months goes by and then another violation, you won't ever escalate. And she said, I don't remember exactly. It was something like 6 steps and it's pretty hard. And they send you a letter every time and they warn you. And it starts with around step 5. They suspend your internet service for 12 hours. And they do that a couple times where they're just suspending you for 12 or 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then they finally I think they suspend you for like months, but they'll never outright ban you because they can't. Because you're basically saying you can't have access to this fundamental critical infrastructure because there just happens to be only one or two companies that does this.
Oh, I mean, if you banned people like regularly, that would be a good way to get a lot of movement on like, no, we need
public broadband.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's look at just finish this thought. They found 81% of drivers did not receive more than one violation. Further evidence that cameras created a behavioral change. And so like, okay, so then let's have some clandestine rule that nobody hears about because no one's going to realize these things are going in until they go in because no one's reading this and no one's paying attention at the state house or paying attention at the city council, right? And I think that a lot of this probably has to do with some of it is maybe traffic fatalities. If you want to stop traffic fatalities, here's a better option and a better option for the environment too. Fucking build public transit. Invest in public transit so people don't have to drive. Instead, they're like, oh, we're gonna fucking know where everybody is at any given time. Let me provide
it's easier. It's less of a bitter pill to swallow than getting on a bus. Well, I think most people would rather give up their fundamental privacy than get on a bus ever.
Well, that's because the public transit system isn't fucking serviceable. Like it doesn't work. And that's what I'm suggesting is have a public transit system that people can use because it works in a lot of other fucking places in the world. There are many places where they have very, very functional public transit systems and people use them.
Yeah.
Right. We just don't have that in America because there's some contractor that's going to get paid to install it, some manufacturer that gets paid to build it. There's going to be some fucking technician that gets paid to maintain it. There's going to be somebody in a back office that gets paid to fucking review shit. And all that, so they make money, plus automobile companies, tire companies, muffler shops, fucking gasoline, petrol companies, etc., so forth. They all make money. We're never going to have public transit because public transit is an investment of public money for public good, and we would rather have a system where we design our entire system around the profit of the few above the benefit of the many. And that is why...
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, have you ever seen the license plate frames that have like it's like an acrylic that's darkened? It's so weird. I looked at it and I'm like, how can that be legal? You're obstructing the view of your rear license plate. Like that can't be right. But I see it more and more nowadays. It's basically just like sunglasses for your license plate.
And maybe that's a technique to avoid cameras. Because here's a little anecdote I'd like to share to finish this out on why, despite it perhaps being beneficial for reducing. Oh, you can actually see this splinter on camera. That's fucking wild. A little black dot on my finger. Or my thumb. Yeah. So there is a potential benefit in that it reduces traffic encounters. I don't give a shit so much about the safety of police officers, but I do find it annoying when a cop pulls someone over on a busy stretch of road and like all it does is create fucking worse traffic problems.
Yeah.
So in that could be a benefit, right? It's safer for the officer, I guess, but also safer for everybody else because no one's going to be fucking brake checking you on the interstate.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a cop on the side of the road.
Right.
It could be safer for black and brown people. Again, I think the solution is not to just have a
millions of dollars on cameras
way of just destroying them through fines. Again, it says behavioral change. The data says people might get a ticket or two and then it changes them, except the rich people who don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And so there's that benefit, and then the third benefit could potentially be this other data, right? Like it actually does reduce fatalities. It does reduce the severity of injury. It does actually cause people to be safer in dangerous areas. So if it was applied to like the hot spots in these areas, I would be okay with it. But I suspect this is the kind of thing, if Dubai is the model, this will be rolled out where there is a speeding camera every fucking couple miles on every exit ramp, on every major intersection. There's traffic light cameras there's just cameras everywhere. And we live in a society where those cameras So, for example, red light cameras.
Mhm.
I saw one where they're like, oh, somebody shot a cop. They were like a parolee or something. They got pulled over, obviously had a gun, probably drugs or something. And they didn't want to go back to jail. So they shot the fucking cop.
Yeah.
And then they took off. And then they found them where they were based on, not because they ran red lights, but because they could just search for that license plate on every single red light camera in the entire region of Sacramento.
Right.
So they found out exactly where he went, was able to narrow it down, then cross-reference that with family members and friends that they had in his record, and they found exactly where he was within like a couple hours.
Yeah.
And so when I was still on social media, this was a number of years ago, I saw this in a kind of right-wing space on Facebook. And I said, I think it was the state of Jefferson had posted it. Like, good, they got this cop killer. Fuck this guy. Well, I don't even think he killed the cop. I just think he shot him. Anyway, this guy who dared defile our boys in blues, whatever. And they were like, this is great. And I was like, wait, y'all are supposed to be like, y'all spend almost every breath talking about the tyranny of government and talking about like libertarian values and like how we need freedom and how like our whole movement is about freedom. And yet you're all here celebrating tyranny. Because if they can just be like those red light cameras, you're like, oh, it's just to help kind of make people aware so they don't hit other people. It's for safety. Think of the children. But in reality, every single one of these cameras, they'll be like, where is this person? Does he own a car? Let's see. Boom. Push of a button. DMV data comes up. There's the driver's license. Click, search, click, search. Boom, boom, boom. He went from here to here to here. Display that on a map, please. Click. Boom, 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 boom. You knew exactly where he went at what time, and it cross-references with the fucking cell tower signals, and they are tracking us every fucking minute of every fucking day. And these fuckers who say they value freedom are cheering that shit on. Because the reality is that they want freedom in their narrowly defined sense
for them,
and as long as they get what they want. So if they can use these intrusive technologies to get something they want, then they will use it. And that is how we get fascism, is that we build tools of oppression for think of the children and all sorts of other bullshit. And then someone who knows that they can use that for their political agenda or their economic agenda, and they get the reins and power over that technology, they will use it to their ends. It is far better to just like not have anybody have access to that level of technology. I mean, what was it? The Christopher Nolan Batman, didn't it have a bit in there about that shit? Where Alfred tells him like you can use a cell phone to basically paint a fucking picture of the place you are.
Yeah.
Like
and he's like, oh, I would only use this for good. And then in the movie, he does destroy it.
No, he does, because I think Alfred's like, no one should have this.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he uses it for his purpose to find the Joker.
Will somebody please think of the children? Oh!
You just took a great episode and copyright striked us.
Yeah, right. It's that shit though that gets me, because like as soon as I hear like, oh, the children, think of the children, I'm just like, something is going on here. Something sinister.
Speaking of which, we are over time, my friend. And speak of the children, and think of the children. Monday, we're going to do a nice little episode on human trafficking.
Yes, we covered traffic today, trafficking on Monday.
Trafficking.
It's all related.
It is what we do. All right, well, this has been a great episode. This is where you cue the music.
Okay, it is cued and going. A very low volume, and I did find a way to make it so it just continues on once we switch over to Dancing Baby Yoda.
Fantastic. Shit, bro. So we had a great show today. We talked about the upcoming Ahsoka show. Looks exciting. Looks like a lot of fun. Looks like it'll be a little more coherent than The Mandalorian. We also talked a little bit about Leslie Headland and her fascination with Wookiee Jedi. What did we call it? She did it all for the Wookiee. And then we talked a little bit about speeding cameras and how, like, here at With Under's Applause podcast, we like to approach issues with a clear mind and critical thinking skills. And this is a fucking tough call. In my humble opinion, I wish that people would spend less time in automobiles, and that would be a better solution than expanding the surveillance state. But I'm probably a minority in this. And so with that said, do you have any final thoughts, my friend?
Nope, we are good.
All right, folks, remember, when liberty dies, it dies.
With thunderous applause.
Bye-bye.
See, what I need is like a sound effect. Oh my God.